Contract activity is actually holding fairly steady, although it is declining. We would expect to see that, seasonally speaking. It's much easier for a seller who's planning to leave the borough. They can sell and move on. It's great market for those sellers. Of course, we're going to see more properties coming onto the market, very likely, so you're going to have a little more competition. Welcome to this week's look at the state of the New York City real estate market, where I take a look at the luxury market, the Manhattan market, and the Brooklyn market. I do it because I want you to be informed. It never hurts when you're a consumer to be informed. Welcome to this week's look at the state of the New York City real estate market. This is for July 24th to 30th, the last week of July. We're going to get started with the luxury market, then we're going to shift, take a look at what happened in the Manhattan market, what's happening in the Brooklyn market, and just as a little preview on those two markets, the Manhattan and the Brooklyn market, those are each of them performing very differently, so be sure that you stick around for those two reports. When I finish, I'm going to sum it all up, give you my thoughts and takeaways, especially if you're a seller or a buyer in the New York City market. You're going to want to stick around and get my tips for how to be successful in the current market. Okay, we're going to get started with the luxury market. There were 19 contracts signed for properties that were priced at $4 million and above. That is 3 fewer than the previous week. Condos outsold co-ops 13-2. There was 1 condop and 3 townhouses in this group. 19 contracts is actually the lowest number of contracts in the last 6 months. Lowest since the last week of January, when 15 contracts were signed. Number 1 contract was a townhouse at 58 Bank Street. It was asking $25 million. It was reduced from $27.5 million when it was listed back in April. The seller paid $18.14 million in July of 2015 and then renovated the townhouse. The 5-story, 20-foot wide house has 4 bedrooms, 5.5 bathrooms, and an elevator. It features a saline pool in the basement, a garden on the ground floor, and a library on the 5th floor with a double-height ceiling topped by a dome-shaped skylight. The library has glass doors that open onto a south-facing roof deck. The annual real estate taxes are a little over $91,000. The number 2 contract was apartment 15A at 685 Fifth Avenue, asking a little over $22 million. This Mandarin Oriental residence condo has a little over 3,300 square feet. It has 2 terraces that total 760 square feet. The living room and 3rd bedroom open onto a terrace overlooking 5th Avenue, has a tiny peak of Central Park. The other terrace is off the master bedroom. The apartment was sold to a foreign buyer who also owns another Mandarin residence in Europe. The 65-unit, 29-story building is being sold with furnished units outfitted with dishes and Italian linens. Amenities include concierge, doorman, private restaurant, outdoor pool, and fitness center. Closings have just begun on the lower floors. We're going to take a look now at the quick stats for the luxury market. The total weekly asking price sales volume, 163,366,980. Average asking price, 8,598,262. Median asking price, 6,300,000. Average discount from original ask to last asking price, 6%. Average days on market, 943. Okay, that is it for the luxury market. We're going to shift now, take a look at what happened in Manhattan last week. As always, if you have any questions, please post those below. I'm always happy to answer them. Last week, I talked about how the supply is falling faster than the demand in Manhattan. We're continuing to see that trend. If we take a look at the 1-week market ticker for the supply, we see 212 properties came on the market, down about a little over 10%. This is kind of normal to see a decline in supply. However, this is even lower than we would typically see this time of year. Contracts signed, however, 183 contracts were signed, down about 6.2%. That's actually not too bad. And as you can see with these off-market properties, 192, that's down almost 14%. We're seeing a lot more properties coming off the market and contracts signed than we're seeing supply coming on. So we're continuing to see a kind of overall deficit in inventory. You can see that as well in the market ticker that shows the 1 month view, 944 properties for the month. That supply is down a little over 32%. The contract activity is also down 757, 26, almost 27%. The off-market properties have jumped up almost 13%, 848. So if we look at this market pulse, it would suggest we are in a seller's market, but that really isn't the case. What's really going on is that we are seeing the inventory decline more quickly than we are seeing the contract activity decline. Contract activity is actually holding fairly steady, although it is declining. We would expect to see that, seasonally speaking. But between the contract activity somewhat declining and the off-market properties rising and not a lot of inventory coming on, it would look from a market pulse standpoint to be kind of a seller's market, but it's really not. So don't be deceived by that little chart. If we look at the supply, you can see that the Manhattan supply continues its summer drift lower. And the demand, the pending sales is ticking downward. It suggests that the high is in. The weekly new listings dropped, but they remain at seasonal levels. And if we look at the contract side, they have ticked down a bit, but they do remain at seasonal levels of 2019 and 2022. We can't really count 2021 because that was just a bonkers year and doesn't really have any bearing on what would be a kind of a more normal year. I want to talk about this chart, this Manhattan Easiness Index. This is a chart that I think will be helpful to those people who are looking to sell. And if you look at this black line, this 2023 line, you will see that this index is suggesting that this is the toughest market to sell in since 2020. If you look at, let's say you compare it to, let's take the most extreme, 2021, the yellow line, you can see, it just, everything was easy for sellers that year. Harder for buyers, of course, but easy for sellers. What's interesting and what I want sellers to pay very close attention to, because I certainly am paying very close attention to this, and I think you should too. Take a look at where these lines all converge in September, where they all kind of meet up and where they meet up kind of again, like August, September. What we're seeing is that everything is kind of converging right around August, September. When we start to see the next rise, and we'll likely see the next rise, is in October. So sellers, if you are having trouble getting your deal done right now, it makes total sense. This is a very tough market to be selling into. Try to get your deal done. And if you have to take a bit of an adjustment to get it done and you can live with that, I'll talk more about that, but try to do it. Otherwise, maybe just sit tight, ride this out a bit, work with the buyers that are still in the market, and then it looks like come fall, we're going to see buyers coming, back into the market. Of course, we're going to see more properties coming onto the market, very likely, so you're going to have a little more competition, but we'll talk about that. Okay, that is it for the Manhattan market. We're going to shift now, take a look at what happened in Brooklyn, which, as I said at the beginning of this report, what's happening in Brooklyn is a little different than what is going on in Manhattan. So be sure you stick around for that. The ways in which Brooklyn and Manhattan are similar, as you'll see from the chart, is that the supply is down in both markets. Where they seem to differ is that contract activity seems to be holding a little more steady in Brooklyn. Buyers seem to be a little more active in Brooklyn. So we're going to take a look at that now. We're going to start with this 1 week look. The supply, 156, down a little over 16%. Contracts jumped almost 6%, 146. Off-market properties down almost 18%. 70 properties came off market. If we take a look at the 1 month look, that supply is 672. That is down a little over 24%. Contracts signed down for the month, a little over 24% as well, 546. Off-market properties rose, however, a little over 18%, 345. Again, putting pressure on the inventory, putting pressure on the buyers who are still in the market, helping out the sellers. Again, though, don't be faked out by this market pulse chart. This does not mean it is fully a seller's market. We're going to talk about that. We see that the liquidity pace chart, if we take this kind of 30-day look at the contract signed, we see that just as with Manhattan, that has dropped a bit, but it hasn't really declined as much. And if we look at the supply, again, Brooklyn supply ticking down. We would expect to be seeing that this time of year. Brooklyn demand may have peaked, but the move, unlike Manhattan, is not so much down, but sideways. The new listings did tick up a little bit, but they still remain below previous year's levels. And the contract signed, interestingly, deal volume ticked up during the week, and this kind of sideways motion could possibly indicate a strengthening market. We're going to have to wait and see. We're turning the corner and heading into August. Not typically our most active period, but you never know. When it comes to New York City real estate, you just never know. So we're going to keep an eye on that. So if we take a look at this Brooklyn Easiness Index, you're going to see that it's far easier if you're a seller in Brooklyn to get your property sold. Now, here's the caveat, and this is part of why the inventory is so low in Brooklyn. If you're a seller who wants to stay in Brooklyn, it's really hard for you to sell right now because most sellers are having trouble then turning around and buying something in Brooklyn because it's very hard to buy in Brooklyn right now. So it's much easier for a seller who's planning to leave the borough. They can sell and move on. It's great market for those sellers. For everybody else, it's a tricky market and not so easy. So we're going to keep an eye on all of this. And hopefully what we're going to see is an improvement in the inventory, but we just don't know. So that's it for Brooklyn. Any questions about the Brooklyn market, please post those below. I'm going to give you my takeaways about what happened last week, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts for sellers and buyers about how to best navigate the current market. 19 contracts were signed last week for properties that were priced at $4 million and above, 3 fewer than the previous week. July in total saw 22 contracts signed for properties that are priced at $10 million and above, our trophy properties. So within that group of all the luxury contracts signed, we saw 22 contract signs. That really isn't a slouchy number. We're going to have to see how August performs because we have seen a kind of an overall slide in the number of luxury contracts being signed at $4 million and above. There were 13 condos, there were 2 co-ops, there was 1 condop, 3 townhouses. Again, condos are consistently outperforming the rest of the property types. And within that, we are seeing that it's often the new development or those properties that are in mint condition. Buyers are opting for those things that they can just move right into. That's what happened last week in the luxury market. With both the Manhattan and the Brooklyn markets, we saw that the supply is really dropping far more quickly than the demand. We are seeing more properties coming off the market, likely sellers who have decided that this is not their market and they're just going to maybe wait it out a little bit, maybe for an extended period of time, Maybe they're just going to wait it out for a few months, come back on the market if they think it's a better time for them. Here are my thoughts for sellers. The next couple of months are likely to be fairly quiet. I shared the index with you about what to expect in terms of easiness in being a seller right now, which also means, if you're a buyer, you can take the information from that as well. Very likely come fall, you're going to see many more buyers coming into the market. Also, the macro factor news has been quite positive. So I do believe that we are looking to have much more positive news going into the fall. Could well see a far more positive real estate market climate come fall. For us, that means we start to really see a lot of contract activity, historically speaking, in October. So what does that mean? If you're a seller and you're on the market right now and you're not getting the activity that you want, well, you have choices, right? So your choice is you could wait and you could just try to work with whoever is coming along. You may want to adjust your price. You may not. You may just want to wait and ride it out. At this point, to take your place off the market doesn't really do you a lot of good. You won't really have enough time to do a full reset. As far as the internet is concerned, you need a full 3 months for that. So no point in really doing anything other than, as I say, if you want to adjust your price or you want to try to work with a buyer who's out there, who's circling, who just maybe doesn't want to give you quite the price that you want, but you're willing to take it, you could do that. So that's one option. The other option is you could wait until the fall. If you wait until the fall, you'll definitely have more buyers and you'll probably maybe be in a much more kind of positive climate from the standpoint of a more robust real estate market. The one thing you will be facing, however, is you will have been on the market for a long time compared to the other properties that are just coming on the market. So you're going to be facing more competition. You will be a little bit old news. Now, does that mean you won't sell? No, it doesn't. But you may or may not be the first thing that buyers want to go see because they will have been aware of your property all this time. And if they wanted to go see it, they would have gone to see it by now. But that's another option. You can just wait and see what happens. Third option, obviously, is you don't have to sell unless you have to sell. But if you don't want to sell and you're in a position not to sell, then you can just simply take your place off the market and rent it out or decide that you're going to keep using it and or not use it and just not sell it. Those would be the three options that sellers would have right now. But for sure, there are buyers. They have stuck around through the summer. So no time like the present. If you want to get your deal done and you have to take a little more of a haircut on your price, but knowing that you aren't going to carry this place and you're not going to be facing whatever comes in the fall and whatever the competition is, maybe this is the time to be making your deal. Buyers, here's a thought. If you're in Brooklyn, you're just really up against it. It is not an easy market. You have a lot of competition and there's not a lot of inventory. If you do see things that have been sitting around for a while, there's probably a reason they've been sitting around for a while, and you may have some leverage there. Those properties like the ones that have been sitting around for 120 some days, you could do a search, see what's out there in both Manhattan and Brooklyn. Maybe you'll find some things that have just been lingering and you'll probably get some good leverage with those properties. Otherwise, if you're not seeing anything that you like, maybe you just want to wait until the fall and see what else might come on the market then. You'll have more competition. You probably won't have a lot of leverage, but maybe you'll see something that you like better than the things that are on the market currently. Okay, that is it for this week's look at the New York City real estate market. As always, I want to thank Urban Digs and the Olshan Luxury Market Report for their amazing reporting. The work that they do helps me to help you to make great decisions. I will be back next week with the very latest news about what's happening in the New York City real estate market. In the meantime, take care.